Phantom Phone Lines Season 0, the show featuring carefully crafted, dramatized, voicemail message-style stories of unsettling, surreal, and perhaps paranormal encounters. Without further ado, let's hear what's been left on the line.
I've been thinking about whether there's a point in telling this in the first place. Not because I'm embarrassed to talk about it, and not because I think someone's going to explain it away for me. I've already had plenty of people try that. I think I just mean there's a point where something stops feeling like a story and starts feeling like part of your routine. And once that happens, it's hard to know where to begin or end it. But I'll try to start at the beginning anyway. It started after my grandma passed. Her house went to me, and I don't mean that in some dramatic inheritance sense. It was just practical. I was the only one close enough, the only one still living in the same county, still tied to the same roads and rhythms she was. Everybody else had drifted off into bigger cities or busier lives. The house itself sits off a quiet stretch of rural road, the kind where the trees arch over the asphalt so much that in certain light it feels like you're driving through a tunnel made of leaves and memory. There's no traffic unless someone's visiting family or lost. Even the mailman knows every bend in the road by heart. Grandma used to say the house settled better when it had somebody paying attention to it. I didn't know what she meant then. I think I do now, but I still don't like the implication. The porch was always the center of everything, not inside the house, the porch. That's where she spent her evenings, in that old rocking chair she refused to replace no matter how worn it got. It had this particular creak to it, wood that had learned the exact weight of her body over years. It didn't just rock, it almost sighed when it moved. After the funeral, I didn't move anything. I just left things as they were, because moving them felt like making a decision I wasn't qualified to make yet. The chair stayed there. I thought maybe time would make it feel less heavy. It didn't. At first, the house was just quiet in the normal way empty houses are quiet. You notice the absence of voices more than anything else. I'd come home from work, step onto the porch, and half expect to hear her TV murmuring through the screen door the way it always used to. But what I started noticing, slowly, almost against my will, was that the porch wasn't just still. It felt attentive, like it was waiting for a routine I hadn't learned yet. The first time I saw the chair move, I didn't even register it properly. It was late afternoon, that soft, slanted light that makes everything look like it's remembering itself. I was unlocking the front door when I happened to glance over. The chair was rocking. Not much, just a gentle back and forth motion, slow enough that if you weren't looking directly at it, you'd miss it entirely. I stopped what I was doing, watched it, told myself it was wind. Except there wasn't any wind that day. The trees weren't moving. The hanging plants on the porch were still. Even the little American flag my grandma kept near the steps hung straight down. Still, I didn't think much of it. Old houses do things like that. I've lived in enough of them to know they settle, creak, shift. Wood reacts to heat, to cold, to moisture. You can talk yourself out of most things if you try hard enough. So I did. I went inside, made dinner, went about my night. But the next evening, it happened again. Same time, same motion, same slow, patient rocking. That was the first pattern I didn't want to notice. Because once you notice something like that, it stops being an accident and starts becoming an expectation. After about a week, I started timing it without meaning to. I'd get home from work, and somewhere in the back of my mind I'd be thinking, it'll start soon. And it did. Every evening, like clockwork. I tried testing it once. I stood on the porch steps and watched directly, waiting for it to happen while I was looking at it. Nothing. Not a single movement. So I laughed a little, actually, out loud. I said something like, all right then, and went inside. But when I came back out a few minutes later, it was moving again. That was the first time I felt something I couldn't immediately file away as coincidence. Not fear, more like hesitation. Like the house had rules I wasn't fully aware of yet. I started adjusting how I looked at it, not staring directly, checking from the window instead, watching through reflections. Each time, I'd catch it differently, sometimes already moving when I looked, sometimes still, until I stopped paying attention for a second. Then it would be moving again when I looked back. I told myself I was just noticing patterns where there weren't any. That's a normal thing the brain does, especially when you're tired, especially when you're alone more than you're used to being. I work long hours. I come home late sometimes. I don't always sleep right. There are explanations for perception being unreliable. I held on to that for a while, but then smaller things started happening. The porch boards near the chair began to show slight changes. Not obvious ones, just subtle shifts in how they looked under light. One board would appear slightly more worn than I remembered. Another would seem slightly cleaner, as if something had brushed across it. The cushion on the chair started showing faint impressions on certain evenings. Not deep, just enough to suggest pressure had been there recently. I started checking more carefully, pressing my hand into it, trying to understand what I was seeing. Sometimes it felt warm, not hot, not like heat from a body, just not cold the way it should have been after sitting empty. That's when I stopped sitting in it entirely, because that felt like crossing a line I couldn't explain back across. There was one evening that shifted everything a little further. I came home later than usual. The sky was already dark, streetlight glow catching on the edges of the porch like dull gold. I pulled into the driveway, sat in the car for a moment before getting out, just decompressing from the day, and I noticed something immediately. The chair wasn't moving. That should have been normal, but it wasn't. It felt like absence in a way I couldn't describe. I got out slowly and walked up the path. Halfway there, I heard it, kirk, one slow rock, then another. But this time it wasn't steady. It felt hesitant, like something had just sat down and wasn't sure how it was supposed to move. I stopped walking. The sound continued for a few seconds, then stopped abruptly. No wind picked up, no settling continued, no gradual fade, just silence. I stood there longer than I probably should have, watching the chair without moving closer. It didn't move again. Eventually I went inside, but I didn't sleep well that night. And after that night, things stopped feeling consistent. Not more intense, not more dramatic, just less predictable. Sometimes I'd come home and the chair would already be angled slightly differently than I remembered leaving it. Sometimes the cushion would show faint impressions I couldn't account for. Once or twice, I noticed the porch light flicker slightly when I was looking directly at the chair, but not when I looked away. Small things. Easy to dismiss individually, harder to ignore as a whole. I tried asking people about it in passing. Neighbors mostly shrugged. Old house, old wood, settling structure, wind patterns between buildings, all reasonable, all comforting in their simplicity. But none of them addressed the feeling that built up over time, that sense of something repeating a behavior with intention. Eventually, I stopped trying to explain it outwardly and just lived alongside it. That's the part I don't like admitting, because that's what it became. Not an event, a presence in routine. I'd come home, check the porch without thinking. Pause. Listen. Wait for creak or silence. Then go inside, depending on what I didn't hear. The strange thing is, most nights it never escalates. It just exists. A slow rocking chair on an old porch in a quiet place where wind can sometimes behave like memory. And I can still tell myself that's all it is, most of the time. But there are nights, rare ones, when I open the door just a little too early or a little too late, and I catch it in a state that doesn't quite match either explanation. Already moving, or just finishing. Like something had been sitting there and only just stood up the moment I became aware of it. Those are the nights I don't sit outside. Those are the nights I leave the porch light on longer than I need to. Not because I think it will help, but because turning it off feels like admitting I'm no longer paying attention. And whatever this is, it seems to prefer when I am.
Hey, hi. I wasn't really planning on calling in, but I've been listening to your show for a while now. Usually when I'm doing homework or just trying not to feel so alone at night, and I keep hearing people say things that sound almost normal until they're not. And I guess that's what this feels like. Normal until you actually sit with it. So, okay, I'll just start. I'm a junior in college, I live off campus in this small apartment, nothing fancy, just one bedroom, thin walls, kind of old but affordable, which is really all I care about right now. I'm pretty busy most days. Classes, part-time job at a coffee place, trying to keep up with assignments. I don't really go out that much anymore. I like being home. I like routine. I like knowing where everything is. And that's probably why this is bothering me. It started with my closet light. It's not even a big thing. It's one of those dumb little pull chain lights, you know? No wall switch, just a bulb hanging with a string. You pull it once, it clicks on. Pull it again, it turns off. Super basic. Super mechanical. There's not really anything that can malfunction in a complicated way. The first time I noticed it, I didn't think anything of it. I woke up early for class. Sun wasn't fully up yet, and there was this thin line of light coming from under my closet door. Just a faint strip, like someone left a lamp on in there. I remember being annoyed more than anything, because I'm pretty careful about that stuff. Electricity bill, you know? So I got up, opened the closet, and sure enough, the light was on. I turned it off, kind of rolled my eyes at myself, and figured I must have forgotten the night before. That happens. Except, I don't think I did. I have this habit, like a checklist before I go to bed. Lights off, laptop closed, phone plugged in, door locked. It's not OCD or anything, just routine. Comfort. But I brushed it off anyway. Then it happened again, maybe 3 nights later. Same thing. Woke up, saw the light under the door. This time it hit me a little differently, because I remembered specifically turning it off the night before. Like, I could picture it. Pulling the chain, hearing the click, seeing it go dark. Still, I told myself I probably just imagined that part. Brains do that. So I started paying attention. That night, before bed, I made a point of standing there and watching the light turn off. I even tugged the chain twice just to make sure it was fully off. I closed the closet door, checked the crack underneath. Dark. Completely dark. Went to sleep. And yeah, you already know. Woke up. Same thin line of light. That's when it stopped being annoying and started being something else. Not scary, exactly. Just wrong. I opened the door slower that time. I don't know why. I guess I was expecting something to be different. But it wasn't. Just my closet. Clothes hanging. Shoes on the floor. That same stupid bulb glowing like it had every right to be on. I turned it off again. And then I just stood there for a second, holding the chain, trying to think through it logically. Loose connection, maybe? Like something inside the mechanism slipping? But it's not a switch. It's a physical pull. It either clicks or it doesn't. There's no in between. So I tried something else. The next night, I tied the chain up. Actually wrapped it around itself and looped it over one of the hangers so it couldn't move. I even took a picture of it, just to be sure I wasn't misremembering. Went to bed feeling kind of ridiculous, but also a little better. Like I'd solved it. Morning comes. Lights on. Chain still tied exactly the way I left it. I remember just standing there, staring at it, trying to make sense of how both things could be true at the same time. Because if the chain didn't move, then how did the light turn on? I didn't touch it right away. I just kind of backed out of the closet and went to class. That whole day felt off. I couldn't focus. I kept replaying it in my head, like there had to be some small detail I was missing. Maybe I tied it wrong. Maybe it slipped and I didn't notice. Maybe there's some weird wiring issue where the light turns on without the chain being pulled. I even Googled it between classes, like pull chain light turns on by itself. And everything I found was either about faulty switches or electrical surges, stuff that didn't really match what I was seeing. Still, I clung to it, because the alternative I didn't even want to define. That night, I didn't tie the chain. I did something different. I closed the closet door almost all the way, but left it open just a crack. Enough that I could see inside from my bed if I leaned a little. I told myself I was just going to watch it for a bit, prove to myself nothing happens, fall asleep eventually, and wake up with it still off. Simple. I lasted maybe an hour, just lying there, staring at that thin gap, waiting for something that never came. Eventually, I got tired enough that my eyes kept closing, and I must have fallen asleep. When I woke up, the room was brighter, morning light coming through the window. And for a second, I forgot everything. Then I looked at the closet. The gap was glowing. I didn't remember hearing anything. No click. No movement. Nothing. Just sometime during the night, it had turned on. Again. I started closing the closet completely after that. I don't know why exactly. It just felt better not seeing it. But that didn't stop me from noticing. Every morning, that same strip of light under the door. Sometimes faint, sometimes brighter. Always there. And here's the part that really started getting to me. It wasn't every night. It was selective. Like 3 nights in a row, nothing. Totally dark. Then one night, on. Then off again for a while. Then on 2 nights back to back. There was no pattern I could track. No obvious trigger. Except maybe one. It seemed to happen more on nights when I stayed up late. Not always. But enough that I noticed. Nights where I was up past 1 or 2, studying or just scrolling on my phone, trying to unwind. I'd go to bed tired, but aware. And those were the nights I'd wake up with that light on. So one night, I stayed up intentionally. Not just late. Like, really late. Almost 3 in the morning. I turned everything else off in the apartment. Lights, TV, everything. Just me, sitting on my bed, the room dim, the closet door closed. Watching. Nothing happened for a long time. I started to feel stupid again. Like I'd built this whole thing up in my head, and there was nothing actually there. I remember checking the time, 3:17 a.m., and right as I was about to give up and go to sleep, I heard it. A soft sound. Not a click, exactly. More like a shift. A tiny movement of metal, almost too quiet to be sure it was real. I froze, stared at the closet door, and then a thin line of light appeared, slowly. Not all at once, not like a switch flipping. It was like it bled through. Faint at first, then brighter until that familiar strip was glowing under the door. I didn't move. I didn't get up. I just sat there, staring at it, trying to decide if I had actually just watched it happen. Because if I did, then the chain didn't matter. The mechanism didn't matter. Something else was turning it on. I stayed awake a long time with that light on. Didn't open the door. Didn't touch it. Just waited for daylight. Eventually, I just fell asleep. When the sun finally came up, I walked over and opened the closet. Everything looked normal, chain hanging loose, light still on. I turned it off, and for the first time I hesitated before letting go of the chain. Like, I didn't trust what would happen after. I've tried to explain it to myself 100 different ways since then. Electrical issue, faulty wiring, power fluctuations. Maybe I'm more tired than I think, and I'm turning it on without remembering. Maybe I dreamed that night I saw it happen. All of that is possible. It has to be. Because the other option is that something in that closet, or around it, is deciding when that light should be on. And I don't like that thought. Not at all. Lately, I've started doing something new. I leave the closet light on when I go to bed. On purpose. Because for some reason, it feels worse to wake up and find that something turned it on than to just let it stay on all night. I don't know if that makes sense, but it feels like if something wants that light on, I'd rather not make it do the work. Anyway, that's it. I know it sounds small. It probably is small. But when you're the one lying there at night, watching a door you know you closed, it doesn't feel small. If anyone else has had something like this, something simple, mechanical, that just doesn't behave the way it should, I'd really like to hear it. Because right now, I don't know if this is a wiring problem, or if I'm sharing my apartment with something that prefers the light on. Okay, sorry, that was long. Thanks for listening. Good night.
Hey, yeah, I don't usually talk like this. I'm more of a listener. I listen to all kinds of shows. Keeps me company on the long runs, you know? But this one thing's been sitting with me for a while now, and I figured if I didn't say it out loud somewhere, it'd just keep rattling around in my head. I've been driving trucks a long time, over 15 years now, Reefer trucks, flatbed, dry vans, I've hauled it all. Nights, mostly. Fewer cars, fewer people, less nonsense. You learn pretty quick that the road has moods. Some stretches feel normal. Others feel off. Not haunted, exactly. Just empty in a way that makes you notice your own breathing. There's this one run I do a couple times a month. Long, straight stretch of highway cut through scrubland and low hills. No towns close by. No truck stops for a good while. Just reflectors, mile markers, and that hum your tires make when you've been holding steady speed for hours. Most nights, radio's quiet. That's normal these days. Not like it used to be. Still, I leave it on. Habit. Channel 19. You never know when someone's going to call out about debris or a speed trap or a wreck up ahead. There's one stretch, maybe 10, 12 miles long, where the CB always goes dead. Not quiet dead. Dead dead. No static, no faint chatter bleeding through. Just nothing. Like someone turned the volume knob down on the world. First time I noticed it, I didn't think much of it. Radios drop signal all the time. Hills, weather, interference from cell towers. It happens. But after a while, I realized it was always the same place. Same mile markers. Same dip in the road where the land slopes just enough that your headlights don't reach as far as you expect. Every single time I hit that stretch, the radio would fall silent. Then one night, it didn't stay silent. I was about halfway through that dead zone when the CB crackled. Not loud, just a soft hiss, like someone brushing a hand over sandpaper. I glanced at the unit, expecting maybe a weak signal cutting through. Then I heard breathing. Not static shape like breathing, actual breathing. Slow, heavy, like someone had their mouth right up on the mic. I froze my hand on the wheel. Truckers breathe into mics all the time. Guys forget to unkey. Guys fall asleep. Guys chew, cough, grunt. I know that. But this was deliberate, steady. No background noise. No engine rumble. No wind. Just inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. I waited for words. None came. So I did what you're supposed to do. I keyed up and said, "Breaker. You all right there, driver?" The second my thumb touched the mic, the channel went dead again. Complete silence, like it never happened. I chalked it up to interference. Maybe someone had a bad mic. Maybe atmospheric conditions were doing something weird. I kept rolling, but it happened again and again. Always in the same stretch, always breathing, never talking. And every time I tried to respond, dead channel. After a few runs, I stopped keying the mic, just listened. The breathing never lasted long. 10 seconds maybe, then gone. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I slowed down a little, just to see if that changed anything. As soon as my speed dropped, the breathing stopped. When I sped back up, it came back. That messed with me more than I'd like to admit. There are explanations. I know that. CB radios can pick up stray signals, crosstalk from nearby equipment, old transmitters still powered somewhere they shouldn't be. Wind through a damaged antenna can make weird sounds. Even your own cab noise can feedback if something's loose. But here's the thing. I tried switching channels. Nothing. I tried turning the radio off entirely. The speaker still hissed once before going quiet. I tried logging the mile markers. Same spot. Every time. One night, I pulled over just past the dead zone, shut the engine down, sat there with the cab ticking as it cooled. No radio noise. Nothing. Peaceful. Then I rolled forward again. As soon as my front tires crossed back into that stretch, breathing. That night, I did something I hadn't done before. I keyed the mic without saying anything, just clicked it open and waited. The breathing stopped immediately, like whoever or whatever was on the other end knew I was listening. I drove the rest of the run in silence, jaw tight, eyes glued to the road. When I finally hit the next truck stop, I mentioned it to an older driver I know. Guy's been hauling freight since before GPS. He laughed, said, "Dead zones will mess with your head. Radio ghosts. You hear enough white noise, your brain fills in the blanks." That made sense. Still does. But ever since then, I turned the CB off before I hit that stretch. Every time. And every once in a while, not always, just enough to keep me honest. I swear I hear breathing anyway. not through the radio, just faint, like air moving in a space that shouldn't have any. I tell myself it's the vents, or the wind slipping through a bad seal, or my own breath echoing in my ears after too much coffee and too little sleep. That's the thing about driving nights. You're alone with your thoughts. You start noticing patterns. Sometimes they're real. Sometimes they're just your brain reaching for company. All I know is this: I don't answer the radio in that stretch anymore, and whatever's on that channel doesn't seem to mind. Thanks for listening. Drive safe out there.
Hey, I don't usually focus so much on this sort of thing. I'm a numbers person. I deal in contracts, schedules, accountability. If something doesn't make sense, I assume there's a system behind it. I just haven't uncovered yet. That's how I've built my career. Find the pattern, identify the cause, correct the issue. So understand, when I say I can't explain this, it's not for lack of trying. I own my building entirely. 12 floors, mid-sized corporate structure downtown. Not flashy, but efficient. I know every tenant, every lease, every maintenance schedule. I know who's supposed to be in that building at any given hour because I've designed it that way. The cleaning crew clocks out at 9. Security runs their rounds at 10 and again just before midnight. After 11, there's no reason for anyone to be there except me. And lately, I've been there a lot. End of quarter. Audits. Expansion planning. The kind of workload that stacks itself higher the more you clear off. I prefer staying late rather than bringing it home. Fewer distractions. Cleaner thinking. At least, it used to be. The first time I noticed anything, I dismissed it immediately. I was on the 11th floor, my office level. Most of the floor is executive space. My office, a few smaller offices, and the main conference room down the hall. Glass walls, long table, 12 chairs. Standard. I was reviewing financial projections when I heard a sound. A chair sliding. Not loudly. Just that soft, unmistakable scrape of legs against polished floor. I paused, listened, and then went back to work. Old buildings make noise. Even well-maintained ones. Air systems shift pressure, materials expand and contract. It's all predictable if you know what you're listening for. Then I heard it again, this time followed by something lighter. Paper shifting. A soft, uneven rustle like someone adjusting a stack of documents. That got my attention, because that wasn't structural. That was intentional. I stood up, walked down the hall, and looked into the conference room. Empty. Chairs neatly arranged, table clear except for the materials I'd left there earlier that afternoon. Nothing out of place. I checked the door handle, locked, just as I'd left it. So I went back to my office and finished my work. That should have been the end of it. But the next night, it happened again. Same time, just after 11. Chair movement, paper sound, pause, silence. I got up quicker that time, walked straight to the conference room, and opened the door immediately. Nothing, everything in place, except one chair, just slightly off angle. Not dramatic, not overturned or pulled far out, just not aligned with the others. I stood there longer than I care to admit, trying to reconstruct what I might have done earlier. Maybe I'd left it that way. Maybe I hadn't noticed. Memory is unreliable when you're tired. So I corrected the chair, made a point of aligning all 12 precisely, and went back to work. The third night is when I stopped dismissing it, because I prepared. Before sitting down in my office, I went into the conference room and arranged everything deliberately. Chairs evenly spaced, papers stacked neatly in the center. I even took a photo on my phone, time-stamped clear reference. Then I locked the door. I returned to my office and waited. It took about 40 minutes. Then I heard it. Chair sliding. Longer this time, more deliberate. Followed by the sound of something being set down. Not dropped, not shuffled, placed. I didn't rush this time. I stood up, walked down the hall at a normal pace, and unlocked the door. The room was empty, but the chairs weren't where I left them. 2 had been pulled slightly back from the table, 1 angled inward as if someone had turned it to face the center. And the papers had been spread out. not chaotically, organized, like someone had been reviewing them. I checked the cameras that night. We have full coverage in all common areas, hallways, entrances, elevator banks, not inside private rooms for reasons, but enough to track movement. There was none. No one entering the floor, no one leaving, no one even passing the conference room. I reviewed the footage twice, then a third time. Nothing. At that point, I involved security. I didn't tell them anything about sounds or chairs. I simply asked them to verify that no one had accessed the 11th floor after hours. Key cards, override codes, anything. They came back with the same answer I expected. No access log, no anomalies, everything normal. That word started to lose meaning around then. Over the next week, the pattern continued. Every night I stayed past 11, I heard it. Chair movement, paper handling, sometimes a faint, almost rhythmic tapping, like fingers against wood. I started documenting it. Times, duration, what I heard, what I found when I checked. It was consistent enough to suggest repetition, but inconsistent enough to resist prediction. Some nights, nothing. Other nights, more activity. Always the same room, always when I was alone. I tested variables, left the door unlocked, same result, removed all papers, still heard movement, disabled the HVAC system temporarily to eliminate airflow, no change. One night I stayed inside the conference room itself, sitting at the table with my laptop, waiting. Nothing happened, not for 2 hours. The moment I stepped out and returned to my office, it started again. That's when I began to consider something I didn't like, that whatever was causing it wasn't random. It was reactive. I stopped telling myself it was a system failure. But I didn't jump to anything irrational either. There are explanations for everything. There are always explanations. They just get more complicated the longer you look. The night that unsettled me the most didn't involve sound at all. It was quiet. Too quiet. I had been working for hours and realized I hadn't heard anything. No chair movement, no paper, nothing, which at that point felt wrong. I stood up and walked to the conference room. The door was closed, locked. I unlocked it and stepped inside. The chairs were arranged differently, not scattered, not disordered, set, evenly spaced, facing inward, not toward the table, toward the center of the room. And the papers were stacked in 12 equal piles, one in front of each chair. I hadn't done that. I know I hadn't done that, because it wasn't how I organize anything. I stood there looking at it, trying to understand what I was seeing in terms I could accept. Maybe I'd done it absent-mindedly. People do things on autopilot, complex things even. But that didn't explain the cameras, or the sounds, or the timing. I didn't stay late after that. Not for a few days. I worked from home, cleared my schedule, tried to reset my perspective. When I returned to the office during normal hours, everything was fine. Normal. Chairs where they should be, no sounds, no disturbances. But I keep thinking about those nights I stayed there past 11. I've considered every explanation I can justify. Unauthorized access that somehow avoids all detection, structural noise mimicking human activity, my own fatigue creating patterns that don't exist, even the possibility that I'm doing it myself and not remembering. But none of those explanations account for everything, and that's the part I can't resolve, because I don't need to prove what it is, I just need to know what it isn't. And I haven't been able to do that yet. So, now, I leave by 11, every night, no exceptions, because whatever is happening in that conference room, it seems to start its work when mine is done, and I've decided I don't need to be there to see the end of it.
Hey, hi. I'm sorry if I sound a little nervous. I've been going back and forth about whether to even share this. Where I'm from, we don't usually say these things out loud unless we have to. But it's been a few days, and I keep thinking about what my mom says. If something doesn't feel right, you don't just ignore it. So, I guess I'll just start. I'm in school right now, still living at home.
It's normal here, saves money, and my parents like having me around. Our house is in that kind of in between place, not fully city, not fully province. We still have space, a yard. Neighbors close enough to hear, but not always to see. Behind our house, there's a small patch of land my mom takes care of. She's always growing something. Not just for food, but for balance, I guess. That's how she explains it. There are herbs, some vegetables, a few flowering plants, and then there are the banana trees. They've been there longer than I can remember. Tall, thick, with those wide leaves that tear at the edges and flap slowly when there's wind. During the day, they're just part of the yard. Background. Shade. But at night, they feel different. Not in a way I can prove. Just the way they hold the dark. My mom has always said the same thing about them. Don't look at banana trees too long at night. She never explained it in detail. Just said it the way she says other things, like not sweeping at night, or not stepping over someone lying down, or saying, "Toby Toby pa," when you pass certain places. It's not fear, exactly. It's respect. Growing up, I followed those things without really thinking about them. But you know how it is when you get older. You start questioning. You start telling yourself there's always a logical explanation. So I stopped taking that warning seriously. Until last week. It was a normal day. I had classes, stayed late to finish a group project, the usual. By the time I got home, it was already dark, maybe around 9:30. Not too late, but the kind of night where everything has already settled. Our street gets quiet fast. After a certain hour, it's just distant sounds, the TVs behind walls, maybe a motorbike passing far away, dogs barking at something no one else can see. My mom asked me to hang the laundry before bed. It's a simple thing. We don't have a dryer, so we hang everything outside on a line behind the house. I've done it so many times I don't even think about it anymore. I grabbed the basket and stepped out through the back door. There's a small light above it. Yellow, a little dim, just enough to see what you're doing. It lights up the line, the ground near the house. But it doesn't reach the trees. Beyond that, it's just shadow. The air felt still. Not heavy, not cold, just quiet. Like everything had settled into place. I started hanging the clothes. One by one. Shirt, clip. Towel, clip. I remember thinking about my classes, what I still had to finish, normal things. Then I noticed something. The trees weren't moving. At first, that doesn't sound strange. But if you've been around banana trees long enough, you know they almost always move. Even with the smallest breeze, their leaves shift, ripple, make that soft tearing sound. But that night, nothing. They were completely still. It caught my attention just enough that I looked up. Just a quick glance at first. Then a second longer. And that's when I remembered my mom's voice in my head. Don't look too long. I almost laughed. I actually smiled a little, like I was catching myself being childish. I even said it quietly, it's just trees. But I didn't look away. I kept staring, trying to prove to myself there was nothing there. And then, I saw it. It wasn't clear. Not like seeing a person standing in front of you. It was more like the absence of light in a shape that shouldn't have been there. Darker than the shadows around it. Tall. Too tall. It stood between two of the banana trees, just beyond where the light faded. At first, my brain tried to make it into something familiar. A person. A post. A trick of overlapping leaves. But it didn't fit any of those. It wasn't leaning. It wasn't uneven. It was upright. Still. Perfectly still. And I felt it. That feeling. Like when someone is looking at you from across a room and you don't need to see their eyes to know it. It was watching me. Not moving toward me. Not hiding. Just aware. The moment that realization settled in, my body reacted before my mind could catch up. My chest tightened. My hands went cold. I think I stopped breathing for a second. I wanted to look away. But I didn't. There's this moment where your brain says, if you look away, you'll lose it, and if you lose it, you'll never know what it was. So I stayed, staring, and then I blinked. Just once. And it was gone. Not fading. Not stepping back. Gone. Like someone erased it. I stared at the same spot, trying to force my eyes to find it again. Trying to convince myself it had just blended into the darkness. And then, the leaves move. All at once. Not like wind. Not a gradual rustle. They shook. Sharp. Sudden. Like something had pushed through them quickly. But the air around me didn't move. I felt it on my skin, still, unchanged. Only the trees reacted. I dropped the clothespin I was holding. I didn't finish the laundry. I didn't even pick up what I dropped. I just grabbed the basket and went straight inside, closing and locking the door behind me faster than I meant to. My mom looked up from the table and asked what happened. I told her I was just tired. She studied me for a second, like she knew I wasn't telling her everything. But she didn't push. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I thought something was going to come inside. It wasn't that kind of fear. It was more like, my mind kept circling back to it. The height. The stillness. The way it didn't move even after I saw it. And the feeling that it had been there before I looked. Like it had always been there. I must have drifted off eventually, because I remember dreaming, but I can't remember what about. Just the feeling of being watched, even there. In the morning, everything looked normal. Too normal. The daylight made everything feel harmless. I almost convinced myself it had been nothing. Just shadows lining up in a strange way. My eyes playing tricks on me in low light. But something pulled me outside again. I went back to the same spot. Same angle. Same distance. I look at the trees in daylight. And that's when I noticed the ground. Between those two trees, the exact place where I saw it, there was a patch of soil that looked wrong. Not dug up. Not disturbed like animals had been there. Just pressed. Flattened slightly, like something heavy had stood there. For a long time. Long enough to leave a mark. I crouched down and touched it. The soil felt compact, firmer than the rest around it. And there were no footprints leading in or out. Just that one space. I didn't tell my mom everything. I just asked her, casually, if anything ever goes near the banana trees at night. She didn't even hesitate. She just said, that's why I tell you not to look too long. Like it was obvious. Like I should have known. I asked her what she meant, but she didn't explain further. Just said, some things stay where they are. If you don't disturb them, they don't disturb you. That stuck with me. Because I realized something. I wasn't just seeing it. I was paying attention to it. And maybe that was the mistake. Since then, I've changed small things. I don't go out there at night unless I have to. If I do, I keep my eyes down. I don't look toward the trees. Not directly. But sometimes, I wonder if I can still feel it. That same awareness. Not strong. Not constant. Just enough to remind me. Like if I looked up, really looked, I might see it again. Standing exactly where it was before. Still. Waiting. And the part one can't stop thinking about is this: it didn't move. Not even when I saw it. Not even when I knew it was there. Like it didn't need to. Like it wasn't afraid of being seen. Like it was never hiding. Just existing. And I was the one who wasn't supposed to notice. Anyway, that's all I have. Maybe it was just shadows. Maybe my mind made it into something bigger than it was. But where I'm from, you don't ignore certain feelings. So now, I just don't look. And I listen when my mom says things like that. Even if she doesn't explain why. Thank you for listening.
Hey. Yeah, I'm not totally sure how to start this, so I'm just gonna say it straight. I've been listening to your show for a while, mostly late at night when I'm trying not to snack, honestly. And you always say people should call in with stuff that doesn't sit right. This is one of those things. I'm a junior. Pretty normal routine. Classes, gym sometimes, nothing weird. I'm not the kind of person who goes looking for whatever you'd call this. The only reason I even noticed something was because I've been on a diet. Not like a crash diet, just trying to be more disciplined. Counting calories, walking more, tracking everything. I downloaded one of those step counting apps, the kind that maps your routes and tells you distance, time, all that. I got kind of into it, actually. It's nice seeing the numbers go up, feeling like you're doing something right for once. So I walk everywhere now, especially at night. Helps with stress. Anyway, this happened about 2 weeks ago. I was leaving the library pretty late. Not all-nighter late, but close. Maybe a little after midnight. Campus was mostly empty. You know how it gets. Quiet, kind of echoey, like everything's holding its breath. I remember checking my app before I left. I'd already hit like 9,000 steps that day, so I figured the walk back to my dorm would push me over 10K. Small victory. It's maybe a 10-minute walk. Straight shot. I've done it 100 times, so I've got my headphones in, but no music playing. Just kind of letting the night sounds come through. And I'm walking past the quad when I notice this light. At first I thought it was just a star or something because it was steady, not blinking like a plane. But it was too low, like way too low. Sitting above the academic buildings, just hanging there. I slowed down without really thinking about it. Then I stopped. Because it wasn't drifting. It wasn't moving across the sky like satellites do. Just there. Fixed. And bright. Not blinding, but sharper than any star I've seen. Like it had edges almost. I took my headphones out and just stood there watching it, trying to figure out what it could be. Drone? Maybe? But it wasn't making any sound, and it wasn't wobbling or adjusting position like drones do. It was perfectly still. I remember thinking, okay, this is weird, but not in a scary way. Just interesting. So I checked my phone, and I actually opened the tracking app for a second. Not for any real reason, just reflex. It showed my path from the library, a straight line like always. I looked back up. The light was still there. I don't know how long I stood there. It felt like maybe a minute, and then it moved. Not gradually, not like it accelerated. It just wasn't there anymore. Or it was, but somewhere else, like it jumped. 1 second it was over the buildings, the next it was higher up off to the side, and then it shot upward and vanished. No trail. No fade. Just gone. I remember saying something out loud like, "What the heck?" even though no one was around. And then I just kind of stood there, waiting for it to come back, I guess. It didn't. So after a minute or two, I shrugged it off, figured it was some kind of drone trick or weird reflection or something I didn't understand. I put my headphones back in and walked home. Normal walk. Same path. Same turns. I even remember checking the app again when I got back, just out of habit. It logged the walk like usual. Nothing looked off at the time. I went to bed. That should have been the end of it. But the next morning, that's when it got weird. I woke up, did my usual thing, checked my phone, checked the app. I like seeing the previous day's total steps. Makes me feel like I'm sticking to something. And the number was way higher than it should have been. Like, way higher. I remember just staring at it thinking it had to be a glitch, because it said I'd walked over 3 miles that night. Not the whole day, the night segment. The walk from the library, which makes no sense. The route from the library to my dorm is maybe half a mile. Less. Honestly, 10 minutes if you're walking slow. 3 miles would mean I'd been walking for, what, an hour? More? So I opened the map. And that's when I felt that drop in my stomach. Because the path wasn't a straight line anymore. It still started at the library. It still ended at my dorm. But in between, it looped. Out toward the far edge of campus, near the athletic fields. Then back in. Then out again, almost like I'd wandered around randomly before heading home. The line crossed over itself in a few places. Messy. Nothing like my usual routes. I just sat there on my bed, staring at it. Trying to remember. And I couldn't. There was no memory of taking any detours. No memory of leaving the main path. No sense of time passing. Just library, light, walk home. That's it. I told myself the app messed up. GPS glitch. Happens all the time. But then I checked the timestamps. It had me leaving the library at 12:14 and arriving at my dorm at 1:03. Almost 50 minutes for a 10-minute walk. I don't remember those extra 40 minutes. At all. I started trying to fill it in. Maybe I stopped somewhere. Maybe I sat on a bench. Maybe I zoned out, walked farther than I meant to, then doubled back. People do that, right? Especially when they're tired. But here's the thing. I don't feel like I did that. There's no gap in my memory. No fuzzy section. It just goes straight from watching that light to being back in my room, like the time in between got compressed or skipped. I even checked my shoes. Still by the door, like I left them. No mud, no grass, nothing that would suggest I'd been out near the fields where the app says I went. I checked my messages too. No texts, no calls. No sign I interacted with anyone. Everything looked normal. Except that map. And the time. I tried to ignore it for a few days. Kept using the app. Kept walking. Everything tracked normally after that. No weird routes. No missing time. But I haven't seen the light again. Sometimes I look for it when I'm walking at night, especially in that same spot near the quad. Part of me wants to see it again. Part of me really doesn't. I've thought about all the normal explanations. GPS drift, app bug, maybe I paused and didn't realize it. Maybe I was more tired than I thought and just don't remember wandering around. That's probably what it is. It has to be. But there's one thing I can't really explain. The app logs elevation changes too, like slight shifts in terrain. Nothing crazy. But on that route, there's a section where it spikes, like I went somewhere higher up than anything around campus. Just for a moment, then back down. There's nowhere on that path where that makes sense. No hills like that, no buildings I could have gone into that fast. It's small, easy to ignore. But it's there. Anyway, I know how this sounds. I saw a weird light, and then my phone told me I walked somewhere I don't remember. That's it. Nothing dramatic. No missing days. No marks on my skin or anything like that. Just numbers that don't add up. But I keep thinking about it, because if the app is right, then I didn't just see something in the sky that night. I went somewhere. And I don't know where. Alright, that's all I've got. If anyone else has had something like that, like with time just not lining up, I'd actually really like to hear it, because right now I don't know if I should trust what I saw or what my phone recorded. Okay, thanks.
Good evening. I hope it is alright I speak like this. I have listened to your program for some time now, mostly when the nights are long and the power is not steady, and you always say a man should put his story somewhere, even if he is not certain what it means. This one, I have tried to keep to myself, but it has not left me. I am not a superstitious man, at least not in the way people think. I work, I keep my house, I respect what I was taught growing up, but I also believe there is usually a reason for things. Wind explains a sound. Animals explain movement. The mind explains fear. Still, there are things we are warned about. Where I come from, elders say, if something calls your name at night, you do not answer the first time. It sounds simple. Like a story to keep children from wandering outside after dark. I knew it. I grew up hearing it. But like many things, you stop thinking about it when you become busy with your own life. Until one night. I forgot. It was not a special night. That is important to say. Nothing felt unusual before it happened. I had come back late from work, later than I like. The roads were quiet, the air still, that kind of stillness where even the insects seemed tired. I remember unlocking my gate. The metal made that familiar scrape, the one I've heard 1,000 times. I stepped inside, closed it behind me, and reached for the latch. That is when I heard it. My name. Clear. Not loud, not shouted, just spoken as if someone stood a few steps behind me. I froze. It is a strange feeling when you hear your name like that. Not like someone calling from far away, not like a voice carried on wind. This was close. Intentional. I turned. There was no one there. The road outside the gate was empty. No movement. No footsteps fading away. No sound at all. For a moment, I stood there, trying to place it. Maybe someone passing by. Maybe a neighbor just out of sight. Maybe my mind filling in something that wasn't there. I even stepped back out onto the road and looked both directions. Nothing. I told myself it was nothing. You see, that is what the mind does first, it protects you with logic. It says, you are tired, you worked late, you imagined it. And maybe that is true. But I made one mistake. I spoke. Not loudly. Just under my breath, almost embarrassed by it. Who's there? The moment I said it, I felt something. Shift. Not around me exactly. More like inside the space I was standing in. The air felt heavier, as if it had been waiting. There was no answer. Just silence. A silence that felt like it was listening back. I did not wait longer than that. I went inside, locked the door, and tried to shake it off. I told myself I had done something foolish, answering like that. But also that it did not matter, because there was nothing there to answer me in the first place. Inside, everything was normal. The lights worked. The walls were the same. The sounds of the house, small, familiar creaks, were unchanged. I ate a little, though I was not very hungry. I sat for some time, listening to the quiet, telling myself over and over that it was just a voice carried strangely, or a trick of my hearing. Eventually, I went to bed. Sleep did not come easily. There was no sound, no movement, nothing obvious. But I had the feeling that if I listened too closely, I might hear my name again. It did not come. At least, not in a way I remember. When I woke up, it was early. The sun had just begun to rise, and the light outside was soft, not yet strong. Morning has a way of making everything seem smaller, easier. I almost laughed at myself as I got out of bed. The fear from the night before felt distant, like something imagined. Until I opened my door. There are always marks in the dust outside my house. Footprints, tire tracks, small signs of life. It is normal. But that morning, the marks were different. At first, I did not notice what was wrong. I simply saw that someone or something had walked there during the night. Bare footprints. That is not unusual in itself. But when I stepped closer, I felt that same drop in my stomach I had felt the night before. The shape was wrong. The prints were too long. The heel looked normal enough, but the toes, they stretched forward in a way I have never seen on a human foot. Longer, narrower, almost reaching. I crouched down to look closer. They were clear. Not smudged. Not partial. Each one pressed into the dust with a weight that looked deliberate. And they came from the direction of my gate. From where I had been standing when I heard my name. I followed them slowly. Step by step, they moved toward my door. Measured. Even. Like someone walking with purpose. My first thought was that someone had come during the night. A person with unusual feet, maybe. Or someone playing a trick. But there were no other marks. No sandals. No shoes. No second set of prints. Just those. They reached my door. And then, they stopped. No turning. No shifting. No sign of movement away. Just stopped. As if whoever, or whatever, had walked there had simply ceased to exist at that point. I stood there for a long time. Long enough that the sun rose higher and the light made the edges of the prints less sharp. I tried to think of explanations. Someone could have stepped backward in their own prints, I told myself. But the depth did not match that. And there were no signs of disturbance where they would have turned. An animal, maybe. But no animal I know leaves prints like that. A trick of light, of shadow, of my own tired eyes. But I was awake now. Fully awake. And the prints were still there. My uncle came by later that morning. I did not plan to tell him, but he noticed something was wrong with me. So I showed him. He did not speak at first. He just looked at the ground, then at me, then back at the prints. Finally, he said something I have not been able to forget. You answered. It was not a question. I did not reply. He nodded slowly, as if confirming something to himself. Then he said, some things call once to see if you are listening. Some things call twice to see if you will answer. I asked him what it meant. He did not answer that directly. He just told me not to speak if I heard my name again at night. Not to respond. Not even quietly. Not everything that knows your name should hear your voice, he said. Since that night, I have been careful. I lock my gate before it is fully dark. I do not linger outside. And sometimes, not every night mind you, but every so often enough, I think I hear it again. My name. Just once. Always from behind me. Always when I am alone. I do not turn anymore. I do not answer. I stand still, let the silence return, and then I go inside. As for the footprints, they were gone by midday. The wind came, light but steady, and erased them like they had never been there. If I had not seen them myself, I would say they were never real. So I tell myself the same things you would expect. That I imagined the voice. That the prints were some strange coincidence. That there is a reason for all of it I simply have not found yet. But there is one thing I cannot explain. The voice. It knew my name. And it said it the way someone does when they expect you to answer. Anyway, that is my story. If anyone listening knows what this could be, something natural, something explainable, I would like to hear it. Because I would prefer to believe that. Very much. Thank you for listening.
That's it for this episode of Phantom Phone Line. This episode is part of Season 0, featuring crafted tales inspired by folklore, urban legends, classic ghost stories, and the paranormal. If you enjoyed tonight's tales, don't forget to subscribe to Phantom Phone Line, and be sure to share this with a friend who loves the unusual and unexplained. If you want to catch up on previous episodes, check our website at www.phantomphoneline.com for links and more information. We've reached the end of the line for now, but remember to stay tuned and keep listening for the next one, here on Phantom Phone Line. Any views and opinions expressed are those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily reflect those of the show's producers, affiliates, or sponsors. This content is intended for entertainmental purposes only and is not a substitute for professional advice or services of any kind. Viewers and listeners should exercise caution, seek professional advice if needed, and are encouraged to draw their own conclusions. Viewer and listener discretion is advised. Some content may be disturbing, sensitive, or triggering to certain audiences. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations is purely coincidental. Some parts of this content may feature elements that were created, altered, enhanced, or modified using digital production tools, techniques, or other advanced production methods, including synthetic or automated processes. All content is the property of Phantom Phone Line and may not be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form without prior written consent.